We're going to start with one we were working on yesterday that hopefully the department, and I'm sure they will, be able to help us figure out exactly what's going on with WMATA. Senate Bill 126.
Yeah, why don't you come up?
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for watching and knowing we were struggling a little bit. You can introduce yourselves, and if you've got, so you basically heard some stuff. We're I think in part we're curious about how the money works.
Sure. So Drew Morrison, I'm a policy advisor for planning and project development in the Secretary's office, and also the acting director of the Washington Area Transit Office, which oversees WMATA for MDOT.
Charlie Scott, Government Relations Office at Metro. So I'm glad to answer any questions as well.
Very good. Well, maybe you didn't watch it all, but
we can dive into some of the items.
Yeah, let's just try to dive into the money flows and what's required and what isn't, and who has to do what first, and all of those pieces, parts, and then somehow make sense of this 3%.
Sure. So as part of the 2018 capital funding deal for WMATA, there was instituted a 3% subsidy growth cap. And the goal of that was to try to manage the growth in operating costs at WMATA. And so there is a baseline assumption in the budget every year that the WMATA subsidy will grow by about 3%. Now, as we're coming out of COVID, the end of COVID aid, and trying to fill what is now a larger gap that has emerged at WMATA because of inflation, because of some of the loss of ridership, because of the loss of that COVID aid, we need to bump up the subsidy level above that 3% cap. And the governor's budget proposes to increase that subsidy level by $150 million above the 3% cap level. And so what this legislation tries to do, or does, it does not codify $150 million. I know that was a question yesterday. It allows the Maryland government to pay the subsidy above that 3% cap level. So any amount above the 3% cap, this legislation is required, and it's required to implement the governor's budget.
So how much? Give us sort of the over time picture of what happened exactly from a dollar standpoint. That it was a certain level, COVID hits, and we got a lot of money in. So presumably those years were okay. Yes?
Correct.
And then as things resumed, the ridership was down, inflation. So things, revenues are lower. And so just give us those actual numbers as it occurred over the last couple of years, if you can.
Sure. And Charlie, you can help with that as well. But basically, exactly, that costs have gone up, consistent with inflation, consistent with collective bargaining agreements, and revenues have gone down. Because we're seeing lower ridership coming out of the pandemic. Another factor is during the early days of the pandemic, when it looked like transit agencies would be higher beneficiaries of COVID dollars than local and state government, there was a credit given as well to the funding jurisdictions so that we did not have the sort of natural increase in the subsidy level. We can certainly pull up the specifics there, but it's that combination of growth over time, a different structural result of ridership. And then in the heart of the pandemic, we actually stopped the stepping up process to try to provide some relief to the local jurisdictions in the early days of the pandemic.
And by local jurisdictions, you mean the three entities or
the funding
really
the funding jurisdiction. So in Maryland's case, that's the state government. Of course, in Northern Virginia, that involves the cities and counties that support the system.
Gotcha. Senator Corbin.
Thank you. When you're talking about the ridership and some of the structural things, and I know I've just from the outside looking and reading some things of the things WMATA is doing as far as some increases in the fares and things of that nature. what does that look like on a structural basis when you talk about the fares? Of how much are they going up? And how much does that equate towards this deficit? And I guess basically what it comes down to is, and I'm not familiar if with Vermont on this agreement, if there's a fare box requirement in there or not, as far as a certain percentage you're supposed to get from the fares. I know that the state, we had some of that stuff, but I don't know if that's included with your calculation. Can you speak to that at all?
Sure. So I think the thing to understand is that the resolution that the jurisdictions seem to be getting to for the fiscal year 25 budget is a balanced approach.
Mhm.
So if we were to have just taken the deficit, the cliff that emerged, we would be looking at a subsidy level more like 250 million in terms of going above the 3%.
Mhm.
So WMATA has made a number of steps to reduce costs.
Mhm.
They're assuming a 0% increase in salaries for both represented and non-represented employees. They are looking at service reductions on the rail system to basically reduce that real peak level of service and flatten it out. So we reduce some of the costs there, and a 12.5% across the board fare increase. So it's not just the increase in the subsidy. It is looking at reducing costs, some of those structurally, some of those one time, and trying to get more in terms of fare revenues from the riders.
What percentage of the fares that come in is a percentage of your overall budget per se?
Charlie, do you have the latest?
You know what I'm saying when I'm asking like fare box?
Yeah, but
recovery, like a
right,
certain
right. The
percentage?
fare box recovery was much higher pre-COVID.
Right.
So right now it varies based on the mode. Metro Rail is still higher than Metro Bus, and Metro Access is the lowest. I believe the Metro Rail is now just below 20%.
Okay.
Metro Bus is only around 7%, and then the Metro Access for the paratransit is around like 4%.
And will those be going up just this one time with that 12% increase, or are all these gonna be going up concurrently going forward for the structural purposes?
So I think there are two things, sort of the fare level will go up, and that should help there. But also there's a number of activities that the general manager and WMATA are taking to collect more fare. So there's been some increases in fare evasion coming out of the pandemic. And WMATA has taken a number of steps through new fare gates and other measures to make sure that people who are getting on the system are paying. And so we should see some increases in fare box recovery from making sure that everybody who's riding is paying their fair share.
Thank you.
Senator Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we're talking about the 150 million above what we're getting. Now, what's the part that we are starting with before we get to 150 million?
So in fiscal year 25, the 3% increase over 24 on the operating budget.
Right.
So that goes from 475 million in 24 to 489 million in 25. So that's the natural 3% growth.
And I think what was stated yesterday, we will find out what we're getting from Virginia in March.
Correct. They're working their way through the state side. So they're split between state and local, and is looking like there's about $65 million from Virginia on the state side. That would be matched by 65 million from the Northern Virginia jurisdictions to come to about 130 as their level.
And Washington.
So far, they have been at 200 million.
And when is that? When are they going to say this is what we can do also as well?
Sure. So Charlie, my understanding.
Yeah, the mayor's budget comes out, I believe, on March 20th. And the district is on the federal fiscal cycle.
Right.
So they don't actually approve their budget until after our WMATA board has approved the requirement for the district. So, but as Drew mentioned, the mayor and the chair have come out, in writing with a commitment of 200 million.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Senator Corman.
I just want to touch on something you just said there, and I didn't understand this or know this in Virginia. Did I hear you say their split is split half between the state and half between the locals, the base of the jurisdictions that I guess WMATA services? Is that my correct understanding?
That's the structure of this funding proposal. Yes.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And any other questions? All right, great. Thank you so much for being here. All right, do I have a motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Sarah, you got this? Transportation Chair? We have a hold on this. This is a hold last time. So. Was this? Did we do this one already? Yep. Thank you. Senate Bill 556.
Senate Bill 556, this is a procurement bill. If you recall the past few sessions, there's been some discussion about how to address.
Philip,
Hello,
nice to see you here.
thank you. There's been legislation, I think the past couple of sessions about how to address issues with material price fluctuations. My understanding is over the interim, there was an informal work group that convened, and as a result of that, you do have a reprint with amendments before your desk. So as amended, what the bill would do would authorize payments from the construction contingency fund for construction contracts that include price adjustments for material price fluctuations of identified eligible product materials. The amendments strike provisions of the bill that were inadvertently included that would require certain price adjustments related to certain events, and instead it just leaves the piece about the construction contingency fund per the agreement reached over the interim.
Questions? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That was as amended. There's Stallings on the floor.
279.
556.
556. We skipped that one. 604.
604, this is a pension bill. This bill would establish a line of duty death benefit in the judges system that currently are the only system that does not have that. The bill also includes provisions that would provide for surviving spouses and other dependents to be eligible to participate in the state health plan consistent with the other systems in the plan. The bill also includes a retroactive provision to address any instances where individuals were killed prior to the effective date of the act. It allows for a surviving spouse to make a claim for the line of duty benefit. There are a couple of amendments just making some clarifying and technical changes. The amendments would clarify that for the survivors enrolled in the state health plan, that they would receive the maximum subsidy allowed for a retiree. That would, in the process of the bill, we uncovered that it was unclear how that actually applied. Disability retirees actually get the full subsidy. So to be consistent with that, we're clarifying that in the amendments for the line of duty death benefits. And then also clarifying amendments that the benefit would be linked to the salary for a sitting judge in the position where the deceased member had occupied. The judge's retirement benefits are tied to the active member's salaries. So to be consistent with that, we had to make that change. And then the third piece in the retroactive provision, there's just a clarification regarding the offsets for benefits already received. The return of contributions will be reduced by any benefits already received under the retroactive provision, and then going forward, the benefits would be under the line of duty death benefit.
Good. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay? The ayes have it. Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
Would the sponsor be entertained like co-sponsors?
Who would like to be a co-sponsor and added a co-sponsor?
Is that everybody?
Looks like everybody. And the chairman missed his opportunity. So I think he'll like to be on too. Okay. Did we vote? Okay, we're done. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Senate Bill 667.
Senate Bill 667, you previously had discussed this. This bill would, as amended, should have reprint at your desk. This bill would authorize the Board of State Contract Appeals to award attorneys' fees for successful bid protests and contract claims. As introduced, it would require attorney's fees. The amendments just make it authorizing.
Gotcha. Questions? Going once, going twice? All those in favor? All right, opposed, nay? The ayes have it.
Thanks.
3.
Yep. Senate Bill 763 is bill for Somerset County. You do have a local letter for it. It authorizes the county commissioners to sell a specific property under terms considered appropriate by the county commissioners.
Any questions?
Favorable.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay? The ayes have it.
You did,
67.
correct?
Senator Bailey, there's been like 6 for MDOT that have been successful in the last few years. On 667, the contract names. They've only had like, out of like 80, there's been like 5 successful. And then 1 on the contract claim, so it doesn't happen often.
Soccer.
And then 1 for 763.
And then we did 763.
We did. Mhm. Favorable Somerset County.
Maybe loves sale of property. Roseville? Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. I thought you'd like that. Sorry,
Nope.
I'm back.
Nope.
Several amendments.
Okay. This is 747. It's both mine and Senator Benson's bill.
You have a reprint on your desk for this one. This one deals with the submission of annual audits and financial reports that each of the local government entities are required to do annually to Office of Legislative Audits and Department of Legislative Services. So in the reprint, basically as the bill came in, all the changes are on page 3. It would have required, okay, so under current law, if those reports are more than a year delayed, the the executive director of the Department of Legislative Services has the authority to require the comptroller to withhold any state funds, including, revenues from taxes and stuff from the delinquent local government entities. Under the bill, so that's authorizing. Under the bill, it creates provisions that would actually require withholding of funds. The circumstances of that would be under the amendments that if the reports are 2 years late, then the executive director shall notify the comptroller to withhold 20% of state aid for highway user revenues and disparity grants. The amendment strikes police aid, so that will not be subject to withholding. And then there are provisions, the following provisions, beginning on line 25, deal with how long that discontinuance should happen and what happens if the local government entity becomes compliant again. You know, the tricky thing there is, you know, multiple years could pass. So if they continue to have not submitted it, each successive fiscal year that they don't submit it will also be withheld the 20%. If they then, but when they do submit it, only for the fiscal year in which they submit it would they get those fundings back. The other amendment is on, well, the amendments that are on page 4 are just some cleaning up of some language. And then after line 7 on the last page makes this bill prospective only. So this would only apply to the fiscal 2024 audits and financial statements. And if they become delinquent in 2 years, then this provision. So this would not affect any current delinquencies.
So the bill came in pretty strong, very strong. I'm offering these amendments because I think they're reasonable. They're still strong. They still require action, but it gives a little more time. And I felt uncomfortable with the police aid part of it. I don't want to put any areas at risk of their receiving the monies for public safety. So I didn't think that was, I thought that was reasonable to take out of. But I do still think it's strong. I think it's serious. And hopefully no municipalities will ever find themselves in this position. Particularly municipalities that would go to a 3rd year. It won't happen anymore.
Move favorable.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Good bill, Senator Benson.
You want to take this one, Senator Benson, on the floor? All right, she's on there. You can do it. Okay. 777.
Alrighty, another reprint. This dealt with, this is coming from the treasurer. And it deals with 4 commissions, boards of trustees, etc., that the commissioner is a ex officio member of. And it would delete the treasurer. Did I say the commissioner? It would delete the treasurer from being a member of those. So the first one is the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, the Board of Trustees. So that would delete the treasurer off of membership there. The amendments, let's see, the next one is on page 6 of the reprint. This is for the Commission on Climate Change. The amendment, which we got from the treasurers, he had mentioned during the hearing about swapping in the comptroller. So that's what this amendment does for this particular Commission on Climate Change. It would add the comptroller but delete the treasurer. Then for the Board of Directors for the Maryland Environmental Services, it would delete the treasurer there. And then the last one is the Coast Smart Council. And this again would be a swap, adding the comptroller, deleting the treasurer.
Senator Zucker.
Do we know if the comptroller's office is okay with that?
That's our understanding.
That's my understanding, but I don't have confirmation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Senator McRae.
Mr. Chair, there was a question asked during the hearing in reference to MES and putting them at an even number.
So, yeah, so with MES, it does leave 6 voting members. I was looking at other commissions. There's lots of commissions that have even numbers. What this bill does do on page 10, it does change the stated quorum number from
Okay.
5 to 4.
think that was the main thing when we did the MES reform bill. There were a number of protections, safeguards in there to make sure that there was there, so.
You good?
Move favorable.
All those in favor? Opposed? Mayor Zucker?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
You,
Oh, the bill.
not that you should have to ask. Thank you. I'll have another. How's that? Not anymore. 800.
The Bill 800, this addresses an issue with the 529 programs related to some audit findings. It clarifies that the 529 program accounts, the prepaid college trust, the investment plan, and the ABLE program are not subject to the Uniform Disposition of Abandoned Property Act. There is an amendment that makes some technical changes and then also clarifies, however, uncashed checks are subject to the act. The reason given for this in the testimony from the treasurer's office is that the comptroller's unclaimed property division already kind of has some built-in processes to help reunite people with that, and so that they leaving the uncashed checks subject to the act will help reunite people with those funds.
The amendments.
Okay, questions? All's in favor? Opposed?
What a man.
Wow, someone actually offered.
Yeah.
He must want something in the operating budget. I know you do. I know you do. I know you do. All right. Did we actually vote on that? Yes.
Yes.
We did vote. All right. 822.
Senate Bill 822 expands the existing subtraction modification for law enforcement officers who reside in a political subdivision with crime rates that are above the state average to include state law enforcement officers who reside in those political subdivisions.
What was the cost on this one? This was a small amount, wasn't it?
Estimated about 200,000 a year.
All those in favor? Anybody wants to be on it, raise your hand. It's like the committee wants to be on it.
So the NC.
Okay. It's like Quarterman loves that so much, he's gonna. $829.
All right, this is another local bill for Somerset County, and you do have a local letter. This one increases the amount of funds that the commissioners can annually appropriate to volunteer fire companies in the county.
Mr. Chair, I'll take this one. David, I was just texting him to say, give it to Jamie.
All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Very, very.
Question while I'm thinking about
Yeah.
it. What is the process that you prefer when we're doing a bill on the floor? Do we leave the folder?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have folders in my desk that have been there a really long time. Okay.
850.
850 is a bill. This is another line of duty death benefit. Current law allows for payments for certain public safety individuals and then other state employees who are killed in line of duty. The bill would first increase the cap on reasonable funeral expenses from 10,000 to 25,000 for the public safety individuals, and then also add a similar funeral benefit for all other state employees. And then it increases from 100,000 to 125,000, the payment for death when somebody is killed under the circumstances. The bill also provides for inflationary increases beginning in 2026. And then the bill has a retroactive provision allowing survivors to request the death and funeral benefits for anyone killed in the performance of their duties on or after January 1, 2023.
Okay, questions? All's in favor? Opposed? Quarterman? 559.
859.
That too.
Okay, great. This one is for the State Department of Education for their Doors Division, the Division of Rehabilitative Services. It says basically that there's a state match amount that can match for federal funds. And then you get to do the state match. This authorizes the governor to include an amount in order to ensure that the state match amount is met.
Okay, questions? All those in favor? Zucker? Opposed? Yeah. All right, this one's gonna be tricky. But I put it on here because I think it's important. Feel like we need to do something. We don't know exactly what to do, to be honest with you. But let's talk about it. Let's roll this in.
Senate Bill 878 requires 1% of state lottery, fantasy composition, and sports wagering revenues to be deposited into the problem gambling fund. It also makes several changes to the prevalence study and requires that there's a prevalence study for in-person gambling as well as one for online mobile gambling.
So what is 1% from those two generate? Does it split it out in the fiscal note?
It generates approximately $4 million in fiscal note.
The total from both of those?
Yes, from all three sources:
Three sources? Was it third?
fantasy, sports wagering, and lottery.
And the full lottery?
State lottery,
Uh,
fantasy, competitions, and sports wagering.
okay.
All three.
Okay. $4 million. Yes. Does it split them? I'm sorry. It doesn't split them.
It doesn't split out how it's generated. All of the money is deposited into the lottery commission's fund, and then a percentage of that comes out of there.
Senator Solling?
Mr. Chairman, I thought we've already had this type of program in place, that we do have funds for this, or is this different?
From the casinos, but not from these entities.
Okay, so it's different. Okay.
Yeah, when we did sports betting, we didn't include it.
Okay.
I don't even remember the fantasy part. I think that's prior.
Do we have any idea how much we spend on problem gambling right now per year?
Per year, they currently get $4 million. So it would increase it up to a total of about 8, a little over 8.5. Well, it's used for the problem gambling fund is separated out into different entities that get paid. It includes research that University of Maryland does, as well as the prevalence study. What actually appears to go to the treatment, it's treatment as well, and treatment at low or no cost.
But do we need to double that, really?
I mean, we've been hearing from the advocates, obviously. They've been here on a couple times. They came in on our briefing, and then they came in again on the sports gaming legislation. And I mean, I think they were pretty clear that they were
They needed it.
underfunded. Yeah. I don't think there was any sort of question of that. But
I was just gonna say, I didn't know if there was a balance or not, but you're saying now they don't have enough, so that answers the question.
Senator McCray.
So all these are existing programs. I just want to be clear, are they coming from the general fund or where would the money be coming from?
There is a problem gambling fund that the money will go into. You're talking about where is it coming from out of the revenues?
Yeah, so it's already existing.
There's the State Lottery Commission, whenever funds go into the State Lottery Commission, they are deposited into a fund that the controller controls. Those funds are divvied out amongst like 11 different things named in the bill that already receives funding from that fund. And problem gambling would be an additional source.
So like when we did sports betting, we had all these different places that we were landing things. I don't know if we did it in totality 100%. Is there a certain percentage that's left and go to the general fund, or no, we'll be taking money from stuff that already exists?
So no, it's not taking money from stuff that's already exists. It's taking money out of the fund that the lottery has. But whatever is left, it's gonna be money left in that fund after this 1% is taken. That would go to the general fund in the end. So in that respect, yes, it could be, it's gonna take money from what would ultimately be deposited into the general fund, but it's not directly general fund revenues right now.
Senator Hellman.
I want to lend my voice in support of this. I mean, I think OLA heard, I think it was sometime in the fall pre-session about some of these issues. And I didn't realize it at the time that we were not, that the sports licenses did not also include. And so in somewhat a matter of fairness across different types of gambling platforms, I think everyone contributes to the problem. So I think everyone should contribute to the solution.
Do you have the percentage on the casinos?
It isn't a percentage. There is $475 for each table,
Right.
VLT, and then $500 for each table game.
Right. How much does that generate?
That's where they're receiving the approximately.
The form,
4
that
million.
gets the
Yes.
format, that adds up to that. Senator Zucker?
So Deneen, so right now, is the fiscal note correct where it says on exhibit 1 that in FY25, there'll be a decrease of what, 5.2 million in general funds? Is that all correct?
So it's $4 to $5 million.
Okay.
But again, it comes out of that lottery fund that ultimately whatever's left
Will go to
goes
general
the
fund.
general fund.
So in effect, just so we understand, this is in effect creating a mandate of $4 to $5 million a year. Because that money would have come to the general fund, or one of the parts that we already fund other things. Yep. Yes.
I mean, I see this, she's saying this is a study. And knowing that they're looking at
This is not a study. This is for real.
Oh, okay, then I think in sense, then if it's not gonna be a study, because it says study right here, I don't know why, but anyway, if it's not gonna be a study. I think it should be looked into that if 4 million is too much. That we can look into saying, oh, can we adjust that accordingly as the years go on, possibly, Mr. Sherman? So,
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. Where does the 4 million come from? Where does the rate come from? What's the rationale for that rate as opposed to some other rate? Anybody know? Kind of arbitrary.
1%? You mean for the 1%?
How did they come up with the 1%?
Yeah,
They took 1%
gotcha.
from
There was no particular
the
rationale for the
proceeds
1%.
of.
There might have been, but we don't know.
We don't know what it is.
We don't know what it
That's
is.
fine. That's what I'm asking. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Do a 0.5% instead of a 1%.
Yeah, I actually was, I don't know. We're thinking alike. I don't know what
Great mind, think alike.
I don't know. I'm worried.
You should be.
I tell you what we need to do, I think, we have some choices. We can take a day on this and send some questions to some people, which never hurts. But my inclination is to do that. And my inclination also is then to set up a reporting plan about exactly where everything is spent for this and how it's spent and in the component parts and all of that. It's not, is that part of it at all at this point?
No, there
It
is
is
no
not part of
requirement for
that.
that.
So we're definitely gonna do that. But I'm fine waiting till our next voting session and see if we can get a little more information out of the problem gambling folks and see exactly. They can give us a baseline on what's going on right now, and we'll go from there. But it's a 100% increase, right? But it's not a huge amount of money in the context of everything.
Want to be sure it's needed.
Yep, I think I think it's gonna come back. I think it's pretty, my sense is that it's compelling. But let's take it till the next voting session to get a little more information from them. Okay. Maybe don't go away. $8.97.
Senate Bill 897, this is the bill that you all heard in reference to the subtraction modification that was needed for death benefits for law enforcement officers, and it also includes firefighters. There is an amendment on the bill that makes this a bill an emergency measure. That's the only amendment.
And what does it end up being? The amount? What's the note on?
The note on it was indeterminate.
Of course.
It just says general fund revenues would decrease for this one minimally. But for this one particular incident, I think it's about $125,000.
Yeah, this was that horrible case. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor as amended? Opposed? Sure. Anybody want to co-sponsor, raise your hand.
Sure.
Is that everybody? Everybody.
Okay. Senator Bailey. Okay, I think everybody's on. Okay. $7.90.
970, Senate Bill nine
Jeez,
seventy.
I'm dyslexic today.
All this bill does is extends the sunset date for the energy storage systems income tax credit and grant program.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Senator Elford takes that one. All right. Yeah. Let's see if I can call this one right. 973.
Senate Bill 973 codifies the private hospital grant program, which makes recommendations to the governor for funding in the annual state budget for capital projects at private hospitals. The Maryland Hospital Association would establish a review committee and submit recommendations to the governor and secretary of DBM. Beginning in fiscal 26, the governor may include in the capital or operating budget bill an appropriation of $20 million for the program.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Chairman, you want to do this? Yeah. All right. 1027.
All right, Senate Bill 1027. This is the one that you all heard about. Essentially, we've been referring to it as third party appeals. So this is for every level of appeal. What this bill does is, because taxpayer is one of the people that is able to appeal these assessments, but there's no definition of that. So this bill defines that to mean a person who has, and under the amendment, an ownership interest in the property that is subject to an appeal. And then that will just flow through all of the other current law, thus eliminating third parties who don't have an ownership interest from being able to appeal. There is a retroactive provision for any petitions shall be applied to any petitions filed after December 1, 2022, and this is an emergency bill.
I think you all remember this one. All those in favor as amended? I know you love this one, Senator Song. You want to do it? Huh? Nothing, why?
1027.
Oh, what number?
Yeah.
You having a hard time keeping up, Senator? I thought I was going pretty slow.
Oh, you added one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you also want to do this one? I'm sorry. This is the one that I forgot.
What is it?
This is the one that I forgot to put on the
Oh,
list.
what is it?
It's Frederick County. Credit for property located in historic checkered places, and we have a letter.
Okay. 1066.
Senate Bill 1066 requires rather than authorizes the sport wagering licenses and operators to contract with an independent evaluator to evaluate and rate sports wagering content. Just changes the one word from may to shall.
Say it one more time. Made it, what word?
It changes may, it requires rather than authorizes. But there is no fiscal impact.
Okay, other than the sponsor problem on this. Not you, you're the member of the committee. Senator McCray.
So this passed, or a version of this passed last year was the web version that we passed May, and now we're.
Yes, it authorized the basically licensee to do this. So what happened is the State Lottery Commission established the program. They promulgated regulations to get evaluators on board so that they could work with the different groups, whether it's, I don't know, fantasy or whichever casino or whoever has the sports wagering content that want to have it evaluated. They would have to go through those evaluators. Now this is requiring those entities to get their content evaluated rather than authorizing it.
Got it.
Senator Zucker.
I mean, I think this was, this is basically in the same posture as it was introduced, and then we had to make modifications based on the House, but this was the original intent.
We good? Okay. Motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. We got another one. Surprise, surprise. Surprise. I don't know why we're doing this one, but we are.
All right, so this is the one that I left off the list that was supposed to be on the list. So this is local for Frederick County. You do have a letter of support. And what this bill does is it alters a local property tax credit for property located in a historic district by altering, sorry, Senate Bill 769. So it allows them to, it repeals the calculation and duration and instead allows the county to set that on their own.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There, Quarterman, I think I saw your name on that letter. Yeah, and I'm not quite sure I'm not quite sure I understand that, but. Okay, we did 30 bills in 2 days and actually a lot quicker than I thought. But that's budget and tax. So.
That'd be good, but we do it fast.
Yeah,
Well-oiled machine.
well, machine, right? Yes.
The tourism bill, I know we have some, are we voting again soon? Okay.
Once or more, why was more?
The tourism bill that we had earlier, it got voted and it was, MML asked me to introduce it and we have subsequently added the counties, so just want to make sure we didn't get lost in shuffle. Okay, thank you.